There is profound silence that descends upon the world just before the light truly arrives. It is the deep, velvet hush separating the chaotic tapestry of dreams and the sharp, often jarring reality of the day. If you listen closely, in that crucial crystalline moment, you realize the world is not fully awakened, but something within you, perhaps the oldest part of your consciousness, is already entirely alert. This moment, fleeting and often disregarded in the rush of modern schedules, was once considered the most potent time of the entire day by those who built empires and amassed legendary treasures. They believed, quite literally, that true fortune, the kind that transcended mere physical gold, did not wait for the sun. The gold, they said, woke first. We are so accustomed to the idea of fortune being loud, visible, and fought for under the harsh glare of noon that we have forgotten its silent origins. Tonight, as you settle into this unique narrative, this bedtime story designed to curious adult mind, we are going to travel back through the epics. We are seeking out those forgotten chambers and dusty scrolls where the ancient wisdom of wealth creation was codified, not in terms of logistics or exchange rates, but in terms of timing and spiritual alignment. Consider, for a moment, the rhythm of your own life. How often does your alarm shatter the fragile peace of the pre-dawn, instantly thrusting you into a mental scramble? You begin the day running, trying desperately to organize the mental clutter accumulated overnight. But what if the greatest wealth, the clarity, the intuitive understanding, the strategic perception, was only available in the stillness you routinely interrupt? This is the core mystery we unravel tonight. The secret matins of ancient fortune, from the shadowed mining tunnels beneath the Andes, where Incan priests consulted the stillness before the extraction began, to the quiet, dew-covered gardens of eastern monasteries where metal and spirit were considered interchangeable forms of light. We will explore why the first moment of consciousness were deemed more valuable than any physical ingot. The narrative will move slowly, intentionally mirroring the gentle ascent of the morning light. Our journey aims not just to inform, but to calm, using the historical context as a soothing pathway for your own reflection. Think of this story as a guided exploration of your subconscious mind. Using the ancient pursuit of gold as our map, we will examine historical accounts, decipher cryptic folklore, and consider the practical implications of a belief system where intention, set in absolute quiet, possessed the power of alchemy. By embracing this narrative pace, allowing the details of forgotten rituals and legendary hoards to drift gently into your awareness, you are engaging in a quiet form of mental reorganization. The chaotic thoughts that whirl during the day, the anxieties, the half-finished tasks, the nagging doubts, often settle themselves when the conscious mind steps aside. Our exploration will reveal how various cultures utilize the sacred vacuum of time to forge spiritual resilience alongside material prosperity. They understood that external riches were merely a reflection of internal clarity, and that clarity, that untarnished perception, shone brightest when everything else was still sleeping. It was the purest form of gold, intuition untainted by the day's noise. Remain with us until the very end, and you will discover that the metaphor of the gold that woke first is more than just an esoteric tale of treasure hunters. It is a profound, actionable insight into harnessing your own internal resources. The secrets we uncover are subtle, woven into the fabric of forgotten history, offering the key to unlocking that silent, radiant potential that emerges within you, long before your eyes even decide to open fully to the morning sun. Let the historical dust settle, let the legends whisper, and allow your mind to follow the quiet path toward dawn. Switching language to Spanish from Spain Castellano for the main narrative. Bienvenido a tu historia de dormir para adultos. Relaja los hombros, suelta el aliento que quizás estabas conteniendo y permítete viajar con la mente. En esta quietud de la noche, mientras el mundo exterior se ralentiza, vamos a buscar el oro que no brilla a la luz del sol, sino en la penumbra profunda que precede al amanecer. Imaginemos por un momento la civilización inca, no la de los grandes templos a mediodía, sino la que se movía en la oscuridad fresca de los Andes. Para ellos, el oro no era simplemente un metal, era la materialización del sol, el Inti, en la tierra. ¿Pero por qué? Si el oro representaba al sol, sus rituales más importantes ligados a su extracción ocurrían antes de que el Inti cruzara el horizonte. La respuesta yace en una comprensión sutil de la energía. El oro, decían los amautas, sabios incas, Debía ser despertado por el espíritu humano antes de ser tocado por la luz diurna. Los mineros y orfebres de Cusco y Pachacamac no comenzaban su labor con prisas. Se levantaban cuando las constelaciones estaban en su punto más alto, en ese silencio helado donde solo se escuchaba el viento andino. Caminaban hacia las vetas, no como trabajadores, sino como sacerdotes que iban a oficiar una liturgia. Antes de tocar la roca, realizaban una ofrenda silenciosa a la Pachamama, la Madre Tierra. Se sentaban. Simplemente, se sentaban en la oscuridad de la mina. ¿Qué buscaban? Buscaban lo que llamaban la primera visión de metal. No era una visión física, sino una percepción interna, una intuición pura sobre dónde excavar y cómo honrar el material que iban a extraer. Solo después de que esta claridad mental, este oro interno, se manifestaba, encendían sus lámparas y comenzaban la labor. Piensa en esto por un instante, mientras la calma de la noche te envuelve. ¿Cuántas decisiones importantes en tu vida tomas a mediodía, bajo el estrés y la presión de la urgencia, en lugar de esperar esa claridad tranquila de las primeras horas? Podría ser que nuestra prisa por obtener oro, ya sea dinero, éxito o reconocimiento, nos haga perder la capacidad de verlo con una percepción prístina. Los incas nos susurraron un secreto. La riqueza duradera requiere silencio inicial, un momento de armonía subconsciente antes de la acción consciente. Ahora, viajemos miles de kilómetros hacia el este, al antiguo Egipto, a las orillas del Nilo que parpadean bajo la luz de la luna. Aquí, el oro, Nebú, era considerado la carne de los dioses. Los faraones eran enterrados en oro no por ostentación, sino porque querían asegurarse de que su cuerpo se transformara en la materia eterna e indestructible de lo divino. Pero incluso en la manipulación de este metal sagrado, el tiempo era crucial. Los alquimistas y los constructores de tumbas en el Valle de los Reyes, especialmente aquellos dedicados a la fundición y al grabado de objetos rituales, seguían estrictas pautas temporales. El trabajo más delicado, aquel que requería una precisión casi mágica para que el objeto retuviera su carga espiritual, se realizaba en las horas posteriores a la medianoche, antes de que el dios Ra iniciara su viaje diurno. Imagine la China en Antar de Orfebrería de Tebas. El aire es denso, perfumado con incienso que busca purificar las manos que tocan en Nebú. El artesano, trabajando la luz tenue de una antorcha de aceite, no está solo concentrado, está en un estado meditativo. Su respiración es lenta, rítmica, porque está intentando sincronizar su pulso con el pulso del cosmos. Si el oro era la carne de los dioses, tratarlo con la vibración errónea de la prisa o la ansiedad equivalía a profanarlo. Esta quietud, este ritual presolar, tenía un propósito práctico y esotérico. La fundición de metales preciosos requiere la máxima concentración. Cualquier distracción, cualquier sonido discordante, podía afectar el temple o la aleación. Pero más importante aún, creían que el espíritu del metal era más receptivo a la intención humana en el momento en que el mundo de los vivos y el mundo de los muertos se superponían. La madrugada. Era en esa ventana temporal donde la intención se grababa en el oro con mayor permanencia. Detente un instante y reflexiona sobre tu propia intención. Al empezar el día, ¿está tu propósito claro o es solo una reacción a la lista de tareas pendientes? ¿Qué tipo de oro estás intentando moldear en tu vida? ¿El que se rompe fácilmente bajo la presión o el que tiene la solidez de una intención forjada en la calma? Tómate un respiro profundo y siente el peso de esta pregunta. Permite que la respuesta no sea una palabra, sino una sensación de paz. Esta es una historia de dormir, y como tal, te pido que relajes tu juicio y simplemente te permitas flotar sobre estas corrientes de tiempo y creencia. Volvamos a la idea de que el oro es una metáfora. En la tradición alquímica medieval, el oro no era solo metal, era la perfección, la iluminación espiritual. El gran trabajo de la alquimia consistía en transformar la materia base, el plomo, la confusión, el caos, en oro, la pureza, la claridad. Y, sorprendentemente, muchos textos alquímicos insistían en que las etapas más cruciales de la cocción y la transmutación debían llevarse a cabo en momentos de silencio cósmico, lejos del ruido de los mercados y las campanas de las iglesias. ¿Por qué? Porque el alquimista necesitaba una resonancia ininterrumpida. La materia prima no se transforma solo con calor, se transforma con la atención enfocada del operador. Y si la mente del alquimista estaba dispersa por las preocupaciones diurnas, el proceso, conocido como salve coagula, disolver y coagular, fracasaba. Imagina a un sabio en su laboratorio, iluminado únicamente por las brasas de su atanor, horno alquímico. Es la tercera hora de la vigilia, el punto más oscuro y quieto de la noche. Él no está leyendo libros complejos, está observando. Observa el lento vapor que se eleva de su recipiente, escucha el sutil burbujeo. Este silencio absoluto no es la ausencia de sonido, es la presencia plena de la atención. Es en este vacío sonoro donde el oro, la verdad esencial, comienza a despertarse. Este oro que despierta primero no era materialismo, sino previsión. Era la capacidad de ver el resultado antes de que la acción comenzara. Pensemos en los comerciantes fenicios, maestros del comercio marítimo que cimentaron sus fortunas en el Mediterráneo. Sus barcos transportaban riquezas de púrpura, especias y plata. La toma de decisiones en el comercio antiguo era de vida o muerte. Elegir la ruta correcta, saber qué precio pedir o si había que esperar un mejor viento para zarpar. Cuenta una leyenda costera que los capitanes fenicios más exitosos nunca trazaban sus rutas ni cerraban sus acuerdos la mañana después de una noche de festejos. Ellos practicaban lo que llamaban el cálculo de la marea muerta. Se levantaban 2 horas antes del amanecer, caminaban solos hasta la orilla y observaban el mar. No hablaban, no consultaban cartas náuticas de inmediato. Solo observaban la respiración del océano, ese inmenso cuerpo de agua que aún estaba en la fase más tranquila de su ciclo. Lo que buscaban era un tipo de información que solo el cuerpo y el subconsciente pueden procesar. La sutil lectura del aire, la dirección de las olas moribundas, el color del horizonte que aún no había sido alterado por la refracción del sol. En esa quietud, su mente, libre de las distracciones del día anterior, podía sentir el viento que vendría, podía ver los peligros que se acercaban. Este era su verdadero capital, la claridad de la percepción. El oro, la plata, eran solo el resultado de haber tomado decisiones basadas en este momento de quietud. Si te atreves a compartir tus reflexiones, cuéntanos en los comentarios. ¿Cuál es el momento de tu día donde sientes que tu intuición es más nítida, menos contaminada por el ruido externo? Ahora, en el marco de esta historia de dormir, te invito a que experimentes esta quietud tú mismo. No tienes que levantarte de la cama. Simplemente escucha mi voz mientras te acunas suavemente en la idea de que tu mente, ahora mismo, está en un estado de receptividad similar. Estás disolviendo el plomo de tus preocupaciones diurnas para permitir que el oro de la calma resurja. La conexión entre el amanecer y la fortuna no se limita a las culturas precientíficas. De hecho, en las grandes casas de bolsa y los bancos de la Europa renacentista, antes de que las luces eléctricas borraran la diferencia entre la noche y el día, los financieros más astutos guardaban las mañanas para la planificación estratégica y las tardes para la ejecución y el papeleo. Hay crónicas de Venecia y Ámsterdam que describen cómo los prestamistas y mercaderes más ricos insistían en que las transacciones más arriesgadas y lucrativas se discutieran en las horas del búho, el tiempo inmediatamente posterior al levantamiento, cuando la niebla todavía cubría los canales. No era solo porque había menos interrupciones. Era porque la mente, recién liberada del ciclo de sueño profundo, opera con una lógica distinta, más creativa y menos anclada en el miedo. El secreto del oro que despierta primero es que la riqueza no se crea con esfuerzo, sino con enfoque. Y el enfoque es más potente cuando la mente ha pasado por el proceso nocturno de limpieza subconsciente. ¿Alguna vez te has despertado con la solución a un problema que te atormentó el día anterior? Esa es la manifestación de este oro que despierta primero. Mientras dormías, tu subconsciente, esa vasta mina de recursos, estaba trabajando, analizando y organizando el caos. El momento de la vigilia, antes de que el córtex frontal se inunde con listas de tareas y notificaciones, es la breve ventana donde esa solución brilla, intacta. Lamentablemente, en nuestra cultura hiperconectada, la mayoría de nosotros toma ese oro puro y lo arroja inmediatamente a la caldera de las redes sociales o los correos electrónicos. Lo contaminamos con el ruido externo antes de tener la oportunidad de procesar la pepita de sabiduría que nuestra mente subconsciente nos acaba de entregar. Piensa en los rituales de pureza matutina de la antigua Grecia. Los filósofos y matemáticos, como Pitágoras, a menudo caminaban por la mañana temprano, solos. Ellos no caminaban para hacer ejercicio físico, caminaban para ordenar el cosmos interno. Creían que el pensamiento puro, la geometría de la verdad, solo podía ser capturado cuando la ciudad estaba en silencio y el cuerpo estaba en movimiento rítmico, pero la mente estaba quieta. El oro de Pitágoras no era metal, sino el descubrimiento de proporciones armónicas. Y esos descubrimientos, que formaron la base de la civilización occidental, fueron activados en la quietud de la madrugada. Esta historia de dormir te propone que el oro no es solo lo que posees, sino lo que percibes, y tu percepción es más aguda cuando está bañada en el silencio presolar. Profundicemos un poco más en la conexión entre el silencio y el valor. En muchas culturas de Asia, el concepto de Dao, el camino, o Mu, el vacío, es fundamental para la prosperidad. Un comerciante o un guerrero exitoso no era el más ruidoso o el más agresivo, sino que podía operar desde un lugar de quietud interna. En el Japón feudal, los maestros de la ceremonia del té utilizaban el silencio del amanecer para preparar el matcha. Este ritual, que parece tan simple, era en realidad un entrenamiento para la mente. El objetivo no era solo hacer un buen té, sino alcanzar el wabi-sabi, la belleza de la imperfección y la transitoriedad. El valor del té, por lo tanto, residía en la calidad de la atención invertida. Si el maestro comenzaba el ritual con una mente apresurada, el té resultaba insípido. La fortuna, espiritual o material, se evaporaba. ¿Cómo se relaciona esto con el oro? Cuando operas desde una mente en calma, tus acciones son precisas. Desperdicias menos energía, cometes menos errores y, por lo tanto, multiplicas tu eficiencia. En la antigüedad, esta eficiencia silenciosa se traducía directamente en supervivencia y riqueza. El oro no te hace esperar. Eres tú quien espera el momento perfecto, la percepción perfecta, para tocarlo. Ahora, mientras te relajas, permite que tu mente vague por un templo escondido en las junglas de Indochina. No hay personas. Solo hay la niebla y el sonido de insectos lejanos. En el centro de este templo hay una pequeña cámara, y dentro hay una estatua de Buda bañada en una luz que no es ni solar ni lunar. Es el brillo residual de la medianoche. Según las leyendas locales, este templo guarda un tesoro increíble, no de monedas, sino de textos olvidados que revelan cómo transformar el miedo en previsión y la preocupación en planificación. Para acceder a esta cámara, no se necesita una llave física, sino una llave temporal. Hay que llegar al templo y sentarse a esperar en el exterior justo antes del primer canto del gallo. Si el buscador se mueve o intenta forzar la entrada antes de ese momento de transición, el tesoro desaparece. La prueba de este tesoro no es la valentía, sino la paciencia silenciosa. El buscador debe demostrar que valora el proceso de espera y la claridad que trae el amanecer más que la recompensa inmediata. Es una lección sobre la verdadera naturaleza de la fortuna. La fortuna real no es la acumulación, sino la permanencia. ¿Te has preguntado alguna vez por qué las grandes fortunas, incluso las modernas, a menudo tienen un aura de misterio y discreción? Porque los verdaderamente ricos no necesitan hacer ruido. Podría ser que, de manera inconsciente o consciente, sigan el principio del oro que despierta primero. Operan fuera de las horas pico del pánico y la distracción general. Su movimiento más crucial sucede en el silencio, cuando el resto del mundo está dormido o aturdido. Este es el momento de la historia en el que te pido que integres estas ideas. Mientras la noche avanza y te acercas al sueño, piensa lo que significa para ti el oro. ¿Es algo que luchas por obtener, o es un estado mental que cultivas para que te sea entregado con gracia? En las minas de plata de Potosí, en la época colonial, se decía que los trabajadores indígenas, a pesar de la brutalidad de la explotación, a menudo susurraban oraciones a la mina madre no pidiendo más mineral, sino pidiendo la luz de la veta. Ellos sabían que, en la oscuridad, era fácil desperdiciar esfuerzo excavando roca estéril. La luz de la veta era esa percepción intuitiva que les indicaba el camino correcto. Y esta luz interna, la visión clara, llegaba con mayor fuerza si la noche anterior habían descansado en paz y se habían levantado sin la ira del capataz en sus oídos. Esta percepción, esta luz, es el verdadero oro que despierta primero. Es la organización subconsciente de tu día antes de que las demandas externas lo desorganicen. Imagina que tu mente es una vasta biblioteca. Durante el día, los libros vuelan, las ideas chocan, y es difícil encontrar la referencia exacta que necesitas. Pero durante el sueño, un bibliotecario silencioso y sabio, tu subconsciente, pasa toda la noche ordenando y catalogando. Cuando te despiertas, ese bibliotecario te entrega el libro perfecto, abierto en la página correcta. Pero si te lanzas de la cama a la velocidad de la luz, gritándole al bibliotecario que te dé 50 libros a la vez, el caos regresa y la preciosa información se pierde en el alboroto. La práctica de estos antiguos buscadores de fortuna era honrar al bibliotecario interno. era dedicar los primeros 10, 15 o 20 minutos de la mañana antes de encender el ruido, ya sea físico o digital, a simplemente recibir la claridad. ¿Cómo podemos aplicar este secreto milenario hoy, en un mundo donde la luz y el ruido nunca parecen apagarse? El secreto no es necesariamente levantarse a las 4 de la mañana, aunque muchos líderes exitosos lo hagan. El secreto es crear una cámara de silencio, temporal entre el sueño y la acción. Esta cámara de silencio es tu momento de oro. Es el tiempo en que le dices a tu mente, gracias por organizar todo esto. Ahora voy a observar lo que has preparado, sin juzgarlo, sin apresurarlo. Es el momento de la gratitud silenciosa por la nueva perspectiva. Los romanos tenían un término para esto que resuena con la sabiduría matutina, otium. A menudo se traduce erróneamente como ocio, pero en realidad significaba el tiempo dedicado a actividades intelectuales y espirituales de profunda calma, separadas de negotium, negocio, la negación del ocio. Los grandes pensadores y líderes romanos entendían que el verdadero poder y la riqueza, el oro de su imperio, se generaban en el otium, en la reflexión silenciosa, antes de ser gastados en el negotium. ¿Y cuándo era el momento ideal para el otium? Las horas de la mañana, antes de que el foro se llenara de mercaderes y oradores. Mientras continúas relajándote, piensa en qué pequeño ritual otium podrías introducir en tu propia vida. Quizás sea simplemente sentarte junto a una ventana sin revisar tu móvil. Quizás sea beber tu primera taza de café con los ojos cerrados, concentrándote solo en el aroma y el calor. El objetivo es prolongar la vida útil de ese oro que despierta primero, esa claridad subconsciente, antes de que la luz áspera del día la disuelva. Quiero llevarte a otro lugar, al folclore celta de Irlanda. Aquí, el oro no se extraía de las minas, sino que a menudo se encontraba en los pozos sagrados o al pie de árboles ancestrales. Los druidas, que eran los custodios de la sabiduría y a menudo de la riqueza comunal, creían que el valor material tenía un espíritu guardián. Para que el espíritu del oro se manifestara, no se requería fuerza, sino reverencia. Los rituales de búsqueda de tesoros se realizaban en las horas de niebla, cuando el mundo parecía suspendido entre la tierra y el cielo. La niebla, en el folclore celta, era una puerta de entrada al otro mundo. Al operar en esa transición, los druidas creían que su visión se volvía niebla, permitiéndoles ver las verdades ocultas por la realidad sólida. El oro celta no aparecía a la fuerza, se revelaba a aquellos cuya mente estaba lo suficientemente calmada como para distinguir la forma del tesoro dentro de la niebla. Si te apresurabas o eras codicioso, solo encontrabas barro y rocas. Esta es una metáfora poderosa para nuestra vida moderna. La niebla son las distracciones y el caos. El oro es la oportunidad clara que se encuentra dentro de ese caos. Si te lanzas a la niebla a ciegas, te pierdes. Pero si te detienes, permites que tu visión se adapte a la penumbra y operas con calma, la forma de la oportunidad se revela. La gran lección de todas estas culturas, desde los incas hasta los celtas, pasando por los alquimistas, es que la riqueza es un fenómeno de transición. Se encuentra en la intersección de dos estados: el sueño y la vigilia, la noche y el día, el caos y el orden. Y la clave para explotar esta intersección es el silencio absoluto. Antes de que te sumerjas por completo en el sueño, quiero dejarte con una última reflexión. Recuerda que este viaje ha sido una historia de dormir, diseñada para reorganizar tu mente en un nivel profundo. La riqueza más grande que posees no es tu cuenta bancaria o tus posesiones. Es tu capacidad de percibir el mundo con claridad, sin el filtro del miedo o la prisa. El verdadero oro que despierta primero es esa intuición radiante y sin mancha que surge antes de que tus ojos se abran. Mañana por la mañana, cuando sientas ese primer atisbo de conciencia, no te apresures. Tómate un minuto. Escucha el silencio. Siente la pepita de oro de la claridad que tu subconsciente ha extraído y pulido durante la noche. Permite que esa verdad brille por un momento, definiendo la intención de tu día. Solo entonces, con esa intención pura en la mano, levántate y comienza el negotium. El oro te ha esperado. Ha despertado primero, y ahora está listo para ser reconocido. Duerme profundamente, sabiendo que el valor real se genera en la calma, en el sagrado silencio que precede a la luz. Que tengas sueños profundos y reveladores, y que mañana encuentres ese oro que espera ser descubierto en el amanecer de tu propia mente. Descansa. Building upon this understanding of temporal advantage, we must now shift our focus entirely. considering not just the hour of production, but the intrinsic quality of the environment in which profound value is forged. Let's explore the specialized crafts of the medieval period, particularly those where minute precision determined massive wealth. Trades like master clockmaking, where the mechanism itself became a high-value currency. Imagine Master Alera's workshop in 15th century Augsburg, a town humming with the beginnings of complex mechanics. Alera was not known for speed, but for the astonishing longevity and accuracy of her intricate timepieces. True mechanical gold. Her secret was acoustic fidelity. The tiniest tremor, the sudden shout from the street, or the rhythmic clang of the nearby blacksmith could introduce microscopic imperfections into the finely cut gears or the delicate hairsprings. Consequently, Alera enforced a strict ritual. Her most intricate work, the setting of the escapement mechanism, the heart of clock, was reserved for a precise window between the first pre-dawn tolling of the city bell and the awakening of the market porters. During this interval, the world was blanketed in a perfect sonic vacuum. Furthermore, the silence served not only the metal but the mind. Hurry is noise expressed through the body. It is a distant vibration that corrupts patience and precision. Alera understood that the mental chaos generated by anticipated interruptions was just as destructive as a physical tremor. The quietude she cultivated was a form of psychological quarantine. In the isolation of the pre-dawn, her inner pulse became the only rhythm governing the movement of her tools. This intentional slowing allowed her to achieve a profound, almost hypnotic state of hyperfocus, catching imperceptible flaws in the brass and steel that would have been missed in the cluttered light of noon. This silent engagement, this deep meditative attention, was the actual source of clock's longevity, the true gold woven into its gears. Now, consider how this applies when you face a challenge requiring meticulous execution, whether it's drafting a critical document or planning a complex financial strategy. Are you attempting to construct your own internal clockwork, while simultaneously submitting your attention to the incessant clamor of external alerts and demands? The success of precision work, be it mechanical or cognitive, is always dependent on shielding the process from resonant interference. Moreover, the silence carried an ethical weight. Patrons who commissioned Alera's clocks understood that the high cost reflected not just the rare materials, but the guarantee that the object was crafted under conditions of untainted attention. It was a silent, non-negotiable contract. The lack of rush provided an intrinsic quality that transcended mere visible finish. This quiet integrity built profound trust and allowed Alera to command a premium far exceeding her competitors who tolerated the day's din. Another crucial layer is the concept of mental annealing. Just as metal needs a period of cooling in a controlled environment to maximize its strength, the ideas and plans formulated in the acoustic purity of the pre-dawn are psychologically annealed. They are allowed to settle and harden without the external heat of immediate scrutiny or reactive pressure. This ensures that the final result is robust and resistant to the inevitable stresses of the active day. Therefore, the gold that wakes first is often a strategy that was conceived, tested, and strengthened in insulating quiet, guaranteeing a structural resilience that hurried schemes can never possess. In stark contrast to secure, walled cities of Europe, where wealth was safely stored in tangible assets, consider the ancient Polynesian navigators. Their fortune was not measured in bullion, but in certainty. Their vault was a vast, indifferent Pacific, where a single misplaced calculation meant catastrophic annihilation. For these masters of wayfinding, the pre-dawn hours represented the ultimate economic commodity, predictive accuracy. Tua, the Pole navigator of the Marquesas, exemplified this philosophy. He never dared to set his definitive course during the harsh, shimmering light of day, when the wind was loud and the currents massed. Instead, he reserved the 2 hours preceding the first blush of light for pure, dedicated observation, what they termed hokuli, the silent alignment. Lying flat on the deck of his double-hulled canoe, feeling the subtle, powerful pulse of the deep swell, Tua would watch the heavens slowly tilt. He wasn't merely memorizing the rising points of specific stars. He was allowing the massive, silent organization of the cosmos to impose its own infallible order upon his inner self. This critical window of absolute stillness, when the sensory input from the surrounding, agitated ocean was minimized, constituted their most prized strategic asset. The true payoff arrived not with the sun's visible disk, but in the minute before. By training his consciousness in that profound quiet, Tuo learned to distinguish the authentic, underlying rhythm of the ocean from the transient, superficial turbulence. He developed the ability to read the micro ripples, sense the distant temperature shifts, and interpret the subtle movements of birds, effectively sensing distant squalls and shifting trade winds days before they materialize on the horizon. This exceptional foresight wasn't arcane magic. It was a superior data processing granted by a rested, undisturbed, and deeply focused brain operating at its maximum acuity. Furthermore, this rigid discipline yielded an emotional currency far exceeding any physical trade goods. The navigators who practiced Hokuli developed an extraordinary, almost impervious, psychological resilience. When a sudden storm inevitably struck at midday, their reaction was never panic, but rather the calm, unhurried execution of strategy solidified hours earlier in the pre-dawn calm. The quiet focus instilled in those silent hours immunized their decision-making against the paralyzing chaos of the immediate, dangerous moment. Their internal wealth was equanimity under pressure. Now, consider how this profound discipline applies to your own complex navigational charts, your life and career strategies. The goal that wakes first is the psychological ballast, the quiet confidence that allows you to steer through turbulent modern currents without being thrown off course by the momentary wave of stress or unexpected demand. We must ask ourselves, are we allowing our most crucial strategic decisions, our life courses, to be determined by the clear, silent calculations of the pre-dawn mind, or are we instead instinctively reacting, always late, to the distracting noise of the fully awakened day? The deep silence is not merely a break from sound. It is the ultimate tool for forging preemptive psychological wealth, ensuring your internal compass remains absolutely true, a priceless legacy inherited from the Po masters of sea. The quietude of the pre-dawn was often exploited not merely for physical clarity, but for internal fortitude, especially in eras where economic systems relied on fragile records and highly sensitive intellectual property. In 15th century Florence, the immense financial sprawl of the Medici family hinged on more than ledger books. It rested on the flawless, uncorrupted memory of their chief scribes. Consider the case of Brother Theron, the dedicated guardian of the bank's most sensitive international agreements. His wealth was purely cognitive. The secure storage of information was his currency. He was responsible for encoding complex, fluctuating currency exchange rates and the intricate terms of sovereign debts into sophisticated mnemonic devices, ensuring that this intellectual capital remained impervious to external threat or internal confusion. Consequently, Theron's work schedule was entirely antithetical to the city's established rhythm. His most critical and delicate task, the setting of the day's financial projections and the rehearsal of prior agreements, occurred invariably during the deepest, coldest hour of the night, long before the first baker stoked his oven. He did not transcribe from drafts during this time. Rather, he recited the previous day's editions and the coming day's projections entirely from memory. He was convinced, based on years of practice, that the profound absence of external stimuli, the clamor of market traffic, the sudden ringing of the bells, allowed the brain's temporal lobes to operate in a state of maximum retention efficiency. When all surrounding noise ceased, the internal acoustic pathway became intensely sensitized. Theron deliberately used the total blackness and silence to his advantage, relying solely on the echo of the complex figures within his mind, thus forging an unbreakable, secret link between the sound, the number, and the intended secrecy. Furthermore, this extreme stillness fostered a crucial psychological distance from the enormity of the figures he handled. Working in such strict isolation created a necessary buffer, separating the raw, potentially chaotic financial data from the inevitable emotional anxiety associated with massive sums, geopolitical risk, and the immense trust placed in him. Thayer maintained that financial errors were rarely caused by simple calculation flaws, but far more frequently by the heat of human fear or greed that corrupted the transcription process once the city woke up. The goal that woke first in this critical banking context was cognitive security, the unparalleled ability to hold intricate data perfectly stable, untainted by worry or anticipation. Now, reflect upon your own modern dilemmas involving information overload and perpetual demand for instant recall. How often do you find your memory failing? Not due to lack of effort, but due to concurrent cognitive interference from your environment. The Florentine secret compels us to recognize that intellectual capital, the most valuable wealth in the modern economy, requires protected environment for effective encoding and retrieval. You possess internal vaults of incredibly valuable information. Those vaults demand the silence of the pre-dawn to be truly solidified and safe from the internal corruption caused by stress and noise. We must actively seek this window of supreme cognitive quiet to ensure the fidelity of our own mental ledgers. The true asset is the mind's unburdened ability to organize itself before the day's obligations begin the inevitable process of disarray. Building on this exploration of temporal advantage, we must consider fortunes that are not forged in permanent minerals, but captured in the most transient of natural states. Imagine the misty, inaccessible heights of the Wuyi Mountains in ancient China, where the value of the most precious tea, reserved exclusively for the imperial court, rested entirely upon a brief, ethereal moment before sunrise. Here resided Master Li, a man whose vast generational wealth was measured not in coins or land deeds, but in his absolute mastery over the morning atmospheric transition. His highly prized Phoenician peak tea derived its legendary flavor and astronomical market value from a unique molecular structure achieved only when the leaves were picked while still saturated with the qingqi, or pure dew, of the pre-dawn. This was not merely moisture. It was a distilled essence of the night's stillness, believed to hold a superior energetic charge. Master Li's ritual began long before any glimmer of light. He would sit motionless on his mountain path, his eyes closed, listening not for sound, but for cessation of nocturnal humidity and the incipient warming of the stone beneath him. He was a human hygrometer, calibrated by years of silent observation. His challenge was to identify the precise 20-minute window when the dew was at its heaviest concentration and the ambient temperature was exactly 1 degree below the point where the rising light would initiate evaporation. If he waited even 5 minutes too long, the sun's first rays would subtly bruise the leaves, rendering them common and drastically reducing their worth. Consequently, his method of harvest was unique and rigorously silent. Unlike the hurried harvesting teams of his rivals, Master Li's small, specialized group moved with absolute discipline. They communicated only through subtle hand signals, ensuring no rushed footstep or spoken word could introduce the vibrational chaos that might subtly alter the perception or, as they believed, disturb the delicate energy of the morning. His unparalleled fortune was a direct function of this self-imposed acoustic and kinetic quarantine, protecting the infinitesimal period of perfect harvest. Conversely, those competitors who delayed, waiting for sufficient light to visually organize their teams, gained ease of logistics but lost the vital quality. Their leaves yielded only standard commodity prices, while Li's dew-kissed harvest commanded 1,000% premium, a silent monument to perfect timing. This demonstrates a fortune derived entirely from the recognition and seizure of an extremely fragile, fleeting moment, prioritizing atmospheric intuition over visual confirmation. Now, consider how this profound discipline applies when you confront strategic opportunities in your own life that are highly time-sensitive. How often do you wait for the full light of day, for the moment an opportunity becomes obvious and therefore already competitive, instead of relying on the quiet internal signal, that ephemeral qingqi, that whispers the potential of a high-value, transient advantage? Furthermore, Master Li's success underscores a deeper truth. The goal that wakes first demands not only observance, but impeccable internal calibration. It requires training the internal senses to trust subtlety over spectacle. To achieve this level of intuitive precision, one must be fully rested, free from the residual anxieties of the previous day, allowing the subconscious to present its pristine observations untainted by fear or greed. The ability to feel the perfect moment of transition, rather than merely calculating it, is the most priceless asset one can possess, a skill forged exclusively in the absolute stillness before the dawn breaks. The scent of salt and drying timber hung heavy over the Tagus River, yet beneath the chaotic promise of the Lisbon docks lay the silent engine of the Age of Discovery. Afonso de Carvalho, a financier whose immense fortunes financed entire fleets of exploration, believed that the risk inherent in any venture, especially one relying on circumnavigation and the caprice of unknown winds, could only be accurately measured in profound stillness just before the first market cries. He understood that true wealth in this volatile era was not the amount of gold one possessed, but the cold, objective courage committed to the precipice of the unknown. Afonso reserved the critical vetting of aspiring captains for the fourth hour of the morning in his austere, sea-facing chambers, lit only by a single oil lamp. The navigators presented their projected routes. But Afonso rarely looked at the charts first. His attention was fixed solely on the man's eyes and the subtle positioning of his hands. In that perfect acoustic vacuum, the tiny, almost imperceptible tremor of an anxious finger resting on a hypothetical trade route, or the flicker of doubt when discussing projected landfall, registered with exceptional clarity. The day's noise was a natural shield for emotional and logistical deceit. The pre-dawn silence stripped away this protective cover. Afonso was seeking the unedited signal of genuine conviction, the raw, unpolished, internal density that guaranteed persistence through inevitable hardship, a value far more crucial than perfectly drawn longitude lines. Conversely, proposals heard during frenetic hours following sunrise were often tainted by the infectious energy of performance. The captain, buoyed by the city's awakening hustle, might exhibit false bravado or conversational excess, masking fundamental logistical holes in his planning. Afonso dismissed these later presentations as sun-drenched fool's gold, attractive on the surface, but lacking internal structural integrity. The quiet hour, however, allowed him to perceive the captain's true internal landscape, distinguishing between calculated, internalized risk and a desperate, externalized gamble. This subtle calibration of trust, honed by years of silent observation, was his most valuable proprietary technology, enabling him to allocate colossal, volatile capital where others saw only insurmountable risk. This mastery of preemptive assessment ensures success when confronting complex, multivariable decisions. Now, consider how this applies when you face a high-stakes decision requiring a precise reading of human character, whether evaluating a new partner, a professional collaborator, or a significant investment opportunity. Are you listening only to the loud, confident presentations made during the high-stress middle of the day? Or do you create an internal quiet, your own fourth hour of the morning, to allow the nonverbal truths of the situation to surface, listening to the subtle hesitations that the daytime noise would otherwise drown out? Furthermore, the deepest application of Afonso's method lies in rigorous self-assessment. Before launching your own major voyage into a new career path or significant personal change, use that hour of absolute stillness to examine your own conviction. Does your internal presentation of the plan withstand the pressure of acoustic isolation, or does your hand tremble on your own metaphorical map? This is the true gold that wakes first. The unflinching clarity to identify and correct internal inconsistencies, ensuring that the immense capital of your energy and time is committed based on genuine self-trust, not merely external bravado. The capacity to be objectively honest with yourself in the stillness is the single most significant predictor of enduring success. Nevertheless, the protection of fortune often required more than personal discipline. It demanded rituals of collective trust, codified over generations, frequently surrounding assets too volatile or precious for standard documentation. In the volatile landscape of 11th century Samarkand, where the integrity of trade relied less on brutal contracts and more on immediate, mutual respect, the wealthy caravan families employed methods of transfer rooted deeply in temporal precision. Zara, the powerful matriarch of the renowned House of Turan, dealt primarily in delicate, highly concentrated indigo pigments, a commodity whose value could be had by a single exposure to sunlight or moisture. Consequently, the delivery of the high-value indigo never occurred under the scrutiny of the day. Instead, Zara insisted on the silent weighing, an intricate transaction conducted precisely 1 hour before the first call to prayer. The buyer and seller, accompanied by only one trusted witness, would meet in a cool, dark courtyard illuminated exclusively by heavy, shaded lanterns, while the surrounding city was utterly dormant. The complete lack of background noise meant that every slight movement, every hitch of breath, every minute shift of the scale's needle was magnified to profound, almost terrifying degree. This wasn't merely practical logistics. It was a psychological mechanism designed to enforce absolute honesty. The overwhelming silence eliminated the ambient distractions that allowed a dishonest mind to compartmentalize its deception in that exposed quiet, attempting to slip a fraudulent, heavier counterweight onto the scale or subtly substitute a watered pigment became an act of almost audible violation. The stillness served as an immediate, involuntary lie detector, forcing absolute transparency. A misdeed whispered loudly in the vacuum of the night was impossible to deny once the sun rose. Furthermore, this extreme formality cemented the intergenerational value of the family's name. The knowledge that the Turan house would only conduct its most vital exchanges under conditions demanding flawless integrity became their strongest competitive barrier. Competitors who relied on rushed, noisy, daytime transfers constantly battled accusations of adulteration and diminished trust. Conversely, Zara's pigment, authenticated in the sacred silence, commanded immediate belief and therefore a premium price. The goal that woke first, in this critical commercial context, was the sanctity of the transaction itself, guaranteed by acoustic purity. Building on this, the quiet moment of transfer ensured that the generational wisdom, the subtle metrics for judging pigment purity by scent and texture, was passed down perfectly. During the silent weighing, Zara didn't speak the metrics. She simply performed them, allowing her air to absorb the precise, rhythmic movements. The lesson imparted was clear. Speed degrades quality, but stillness refined perception into pure knowledge. Now, consider how this applies when you face a high-stakes decision requiring the precise reading of human character or the sanctity of a professional commitment. Do you prioritize speed and external documentation, or do you actively seek out a silent courtyard, a moment of deep, focused attention when the necessity of genuine, unadulterated commitment is palpable? The most enduring fortunes are founded on relationships where the foundation was tested and affirmed in quiet conviction, not merely signed under distracting pressure. This disciplined search for the truth in silence is the ultimate asset, ensuring that the wealth you build rests on solid ground, protected from the corrosion of deceit and haste. In a contrasting application of this temporal discipline, we must turn our gaze from liquid assets and delicate pigments toward the heavy, unforgiving realm of military engineering. The grandest fortunes of the ancient world were, after all, inextricably tied to conquest, and conquering demanded absolute structural integrity. Consider the Roman Architectus Militaris, the chief siege engineer whose success guaranteed the colossal wealth of a new province. Here, the goal that wakes first was the unwavering stability of the timber and earthworks. Marcus Aurelian, the renowned engineer of the legions under Vespasian, practiced a methodology centered on vibrational security. His most critical constructions, the massive siege ramps or the intricate high-tension catapult foundations, were often compromised not by enemy fire, but by internal settling caused by the ceaseless, rhythmic shock of thousands of legionaries marching nearby. The structural integrity, which represented millions of denarii in strategic capital, needed to be tested under conditions of total, profound stillness. Consequently, Marcus required his key centurions to secure a complete acoustic quarantine around the site during the 3 hours preceding the first drumbeat of the day. This period of enforced silence was not for planning, it was for listening. Marcus would walk the length of the newly constructed foundations, often barefoot, placing his ear directly against the packed earth and the heavy oak timbers. In the deep vacuum of the pre-dawn, every microscopic shift, every groan with fiber adjusting under load, every slight hiss of earth compacting, was magnified into a clear, undeniable auditory signal. This silent scrutiny offered him an opportunity to catch the minute, critical failures, a weak joint or a void in the packing, that the ambient noise of the coming day would have completely masked. If he heard an uneven rhythm or a sudden, unexpected sigh from the structure, he knew immediately where to divert the first wave of laborers for repair. This process was akin to taking the pulse of the earthwork. It revealed the true, intrinsic strength of the structure, free from the camouflage of external distraction. He wasn't confirming success. He was proactively identifying latent catastrophic failure. The resultant value of this quiet dedication was immense. While rival commanders often saw their hastily built siege towers collapse mid-assault, a devastating loss of human and material wealth, Marcus's structure stood firm, transforming his discipline into a continuous flow of successful conquest. His reputation, his gold standard, was built upon the knowledge that his engineering passed the test of silence, holding its truth when the world was asleep. We should, therefore, consider the foundation of our own large-scale plans, be they business ventures, complex health goals, or educational pursuits. Are we launching our projects on foundations that have only been tested under the noisy, forgiving conditions of daytime optimism? Or do we submit our core assumptions to the cold, objective scrutiny of internal quiet, listening for faint, unsettling sounds of flaw that requires immediate preemptive correction? The ultimate goal in any great endeavor is a preemptive structural security, forged not in frantic haste, but in the absolute, revealing silence before action begins. Reflecting on this journey so far, from the high, breathless peaks to the cool, echoing depths of ancient civilization, we begin to sense a unifying principle threading through these epochs of hidden prosperity. We have traversed distances both geographic and temporal, witnessing how the profound silence of the nascent day was universally revered not as a void, but as an incubator, a meticulously protected space where the essence of future success was refined. The diverse methods we encountered, be they meticulous calculations made on a heaving deck, the measured breathing of an artisan over glowing metal, or the intentional, near-spiritual vetting of a high-risk venture, all point toward a single, invaluable commodity that transcends gold, pigment, or structural security. This commodity is pure, untainted perception. It is a capacity to hear the subtle truth beneath the surface noise, to feel the underlying stability of the foundation before the visible stresses are applied. Think of the collective wisdom we've absorbed as being akin to a perfectly still pool, reflecting the unfiltered sky. When the sun is high and the surface is disturbed by wind and movement, the reflections are shattered, yielding only fragmented, unreliable data. But in the deep pre-dawn quiet, the water settles into a mirror of absolute fidelity, revealing the structured reality with startling clarity. The recurring theme is not merely discipline, but temporal reverence, the understanding that certain truths, certain forms of capital, only make themselves available during those fragile hours of transition. These ancestors of fortune were not simply early risers. They were custodians of the stillness, recognizing that the external world provides an alibi for mediocrity and distraction. To achieve enduring, exceptional wealth, they realized they first had to outrun the rising noise, staking a claim on the last bastion of quietude. We have seen how failure, whether in navigation, commerce, or engineering, was often not the result of malice or incompetence, but simply the inability to withstand the harsh, unforgiving scrutiny that the vacuum of silence imposes. That early hour is the moment of reckoning, where every flaw, every unaddressed doubt, and every rush assumption is amplified. The successful, therefore, were those who willingly subjected their intentions and their efforts to this ultimate test of quiet integrity. The true significance of these narratives, then, is not found in the exotic details of the tales themselves, but in the psychological blueprint they offer. They compel us to recognize that the most powerful form of alchemy, the transformation of potential into reality, happens when the conscious self steps back, allowing the deeply organized subconscious intelligence to deliver its findings. It is a quiet moment when the raw data of yesterday is presented as the clear strategy for today. As we prepare to draw our final conclusions, let this cumulative wisdom settle over you. Feel the weight of the shared human experience. The understanding that the greatest value lies hidden, waiting to be accessed not through effort, but through absolute disciplined stillness. The dawn is approaching, and with it, the critical moment to seize the quiet wisdom that is now stirring within your own mind, the final, crucial step in securing your internal gold. The enduring whisper of these ancient narratives reveals a profound convergence. The material pursuit of fortune was, paradoxically, a spiritual discipline. It was never truly about the metal itself, but about the quality of the consciousness brought to bear upon its extraction, formation, or transaction. Across continents and centuries, the truly successful, those who built legacies, not just temporary wealth, were practitioners of what we might call temporal sovereignty. They claimed dominion not over land or men, but over the most fragile and valuable resource, the first clarity of the mind. We have witnessed that the gold that wakes first is, ultimately, a metaphor for the untarnished state of inner perception, the intuitive, synthesized truth delivered by the subconscious before the conscious mind has time to clutter it with fear, memory, or immediate demand. This is a moment when the ego is still drowsy and the soul's true intelligence, having worked tirelessly through the night to process complexity and organize chaos, hands over purified results. The profound lesson is that the moment of highest intellectual and intuitive value is not earned through aggression or exertion, but through reverent reception. To embrace this historical wisdom is to stop treating the dawn as a starting gun for a frantic race, and to start treating it as a sacred receiving chamber. The ancients knew that if you rush into action before you've assimilated that initial, pristine clarity, you risk spending the day attempting to retrieve what you discarded in the first 5 minutes. You are, in essence, operating at a deficit, confusing noise for productivity and haste for momentum. The deepest implication of these bedtime stories for adults lies in an invitation to realignment. You don't need a siege tower in Rome or a fishing canoe in the Marquesas to practice this discipline. Your golden hour is the moment of your own awakening. It is the space you intentionally create between the sound of your alarm and the sound of your first email notification. It is a silent, deliberate act of listening to the rhythm your heart sets for the day before the world attempts to force its own chaotic beat upon you. Allow the cumulative weight of this wisdom to settle. Recognize that the most enduring fortunes, be they measured in happiness, connection, or material success, are those built upon foundations verified in the stillness. They are the plans that have been tested in the quiet of the soul, stripped of self-deception and external validation. As you drift now toward the deepest part of your rest, take with you the understanding that your own intuition is the ultimate untapped resource. It is the only metal that truly woke first, forged in the silent crucible of your subconscious mind. Commit to honoring this first light. May your sleep be deep, your subconscious productive, and your awakening tomorrow be an act of sovereign reception. The most valuable deposit you can make is the time you dedicate to silence. Seek the gold that waits patiently for your quiet attention, and let that clarity define your day, securing a wealth that no circumstance can diminish.